A catastrophe has happened and it's about to get worse. We have over 1,100 people evacuated so far and it's ongoing. Homes are falling down. This is what we really have to say. It's a disaster and the officials are worried that it's about to get a lot worse because the Niscemi landslide, is it a landslide? It's a mountain collapse. It's a village destruction, is worsening by the hour as we speak, and there's heavy rain expected right now, so this will make matters worse. So I want to quote the mayor Massimiliano Conti, but before I want to show you this AI created image that someone posted where this is the village, and unfortunately the arms that hold it together have opened up. They're not there anymore, and this is exactly describes what's happening to Niscemi right now. Mayor said this morning the situation has worsened. The landslide is still ongoing. The front is about 5 kilometers long. That's 3.7 miles. Such a long crack. Houses have already collapsed. A viewpoint fell 100 feet. This is how steep down this goes. City's almost unreachable. And he says we are very, very worried. They have declared a red zone. They have evacuated the red zone right now, 1,100 people. But it looks like they might have to go even further. Residents are saying, my home has collapsed in just an hour. My whole life, a lifetime of sacrifices for this house was swept away. And the residents say, we weren't notified by anyone. And that is strange. Further down in the video, I will explain why. Residents say, an hour before the collapse, we saw that provincial road number 10 had collapsed. Shortly afterward, we noticed cracks on the stairs of our building. At that point, without wasting any time, we decided to leave without taking anything with us. It was a 2-story house. So now the house is half open because it has fallen into the abyss, we have to say. They say my parents had built that house about 30 years ago with great sacrifice. They had invested all their savings in that very house. The situation is dramatic. We also have a business in that area currently under management, and we risk losing it because it falls within the so-called red zone. We now hope that the region will intervene and that words will be translated into action. This is both. This is a tragedy unfolding, but this is also something bad that's about to happen. When we see these images, that when I saw them the first time, I had to look several times. I'm like, what is actually happening here? Did some parts of that village just crack away and sink in a long stretch that is over a mile, maybe even longer, I think, 2 miles long? Like a village that's on top of a mountain and that's about to crack, and it's mind-blowing, guys, what's about to happen, but what has already happened. And it's again in Sicily that has been like destroyed in many parts by this Cyclone Harry. You've probably seen my video about it. It's like tsunami style, 30 to 40 feet waves, like punching into and towards the villages. So that video is in the end screen, but what we have to talk about right now, that is a disaster happened and impending as well. And there's, I have to say, a new landslide, because this is the second time in just a short period of time since January 16th that a village called Niscemi is being hit by force that is destroying entire zones of that village, of that town, has dragged entire neighborhoods and homes with it, as if the landslide that happened there on January 16th wasn't enough. So this area is at risk of isolation because major artery roads, we have to say, are done. This, you cannot repair this quickly, as you can see. and it's the one road is called SP10, and we have already over 500 people, some say even thousands of people evacuated, and we've had a previous closure of the road SP12, and that has aggravated an emergency situation of enormous proportions for the citizens in the area, for the workers, for students, for farmers, for businesses, because we're not only talking about a little winding road that just goes up to the village, we're talking about major arteries. So Provincial Road SP11 from Niscemi Vitoria, better known also unfortunately as the road of, can't say this on YouTube, unaliving, you know what I mean, because of the high number of fatal accidents that's happening on that road already. This now is the only link that they have on Sicily that links Gela, Caltanissetta, and Palermo, and it's overloaded with exceptional traffic right now, and that multiplies the risk for the public. And right now, we don't have immediate solutions for that. And many people that live there say an urgent intervention is essential for the restoration and consolidation of damaged infrastructure. But how can they do this? This thing is still cracking and sinking. It's absolutely crazy what is going on. As you see, it's Niscemi. Let's start with this, guys. Or before we start, can you do me a favor? Give this video an early like and a hype, share it with your friends. Leave me a comment. That helps my channel. Doesn't cost you anything. Province Caltanissetta in Sicily. I mean, Sicily has Etna, the volcano. Now it had Harry, the storm. And Etna is cracking. Etna has a crack that if Etna crashes into the sea, that will generate a tsunami of devastating proportions for the whole area. But let's talk about Niscemi, where the ground has literally started to move again, has forced these large-scale evacuations, cutting roads, bringing back an old fear that people there know just too well, unfortunately, because this isn't like a one-off landslide. I don't even know if we can call that landslide, mountain collapse that is happening there. This landscape there can fail again and again. So more portions of that town can crack away. You don't want to be in any of these houses if that's happening. And especially when the wrong weather hits the wrong geology. So that hill there seems like there's a lot of sand mixed in the geology. And we've had heavy rainfalls. The cyclone, heavy rainfall in a short period of time coming with that storm. And of course, that's why I said timing matters, because this is happening in the aftermath of this Mediterranean storm Harry, right? It has slammed parts of southern Italy with extreme rainfall, Malta as well, violent winds and major coastal damage. That is absolute crazy. But the latest emergency on Sicily that adds on top to all the others is Niscemi. It has impacted the town hard enough that authorities ordered a precautionary evacuation of roughly 500 residents with an emergency shelter set up at the local sports facility, Pio La Torre, and significant support from civil protection volunteers is happening right now. And the landslide threat right now is serious enough to evacuate the entire exposed zone, not just a single house or single houses that are on the edge. This is how high the threat level is. And the key local road connections are disrupted, especially Provincial Road SP10. That's a big problem. It's closed because of this slope instability, right? It has threatened access toward the main arterial route that links Gela and Catania. So this is not isolated. Niscemi has already been dealing with road problems from earlier slope failures, and the area has already been described as almost isolated because multiple connections were compromised. So if you're watching all that and thinking, how can a town suddenly get close to being cut off? Well, the pictures speak for themselves, right? This is how. When a slope instability hits the specific roads that are the lifelines of the local area, right? A landslide then also becomes an infrastructure emergency, not just a geological event that threatens local villages. And the timing is not a coincidence. We mentioned Harry. Storm Harry wasn't just bad weather. It was a Mediterranean cyclone event, like hurricane style event, we have to say that, with waves tsunami style. Unusually severe impacts across Sicily, Calabria, Sardinia, Malta, bringing a dangerous mix of exceptional rainfall with local totals reported in the hundreds of millimeters. Powerful winds, we have reported gusts up to 120 kilometers per hour in some areas. Storm surge, extreme waves up to 10 meters or higher, 30 feet or higher. And one key point is important, guys: when rain falls hard enough and long enough, right? It doesn't just flood the streets, it changes the physics inside a hillside, depending on the geology that is in there. What is the geological material? How does it soak? And how lubricated does it get? That's the thing. Water infiltrates, raises pore water pressure, reduces friction, and turns stable slopes into slopes that can slide. And that's what happened here. And the wider regional context matters too, because reporting around this Storm Harry described like widespread landslides and flooding across affected regions. So in many areas, just not Niscemi, but if you build a village, a town on that hill with a geology that might be prone to these instabilities, well, you can really say, I have to say it, shizzy's hitting the fizzy. So that means the meteorological forcing was large scale. And I mentioned the geology beneath Niscemi. We have beautiful hills, looks great, but they can fail. So let's talk about what that town is built on, because that is the real story, in my opinion. So I have looked at a scientific report from Italy's landslide research community. They are called IRPI CNR. So it describes the Niscemi January 2026 landslide as developing within clay sand units. Clay sand, not stable, right? In a landscape that is already affected by older landslides already, and how they call it, the Calanchi erosion. So the Calanchi erosion, this is these deeply carved badland style gullies you see, where basically weak clays get sculpted off by runoff, by water runoff. And that's a critical combination, guys. I really have to say that, because clay-rich layers can weaken dramatically when they're saturated. And if we have like a hurricane-style rainfall event that was unprecedented, yeah, then it gets even worse. But then if we have alternating sand clay, that can create like internal slip plains and perched water zones in that hill where the town sits on top. So if we hear Calanchi terrain, that tells you erosion and slope processes are already active. I said in my video yesterday, when we were talking about that tragic landslide in New Zealand that has been pushed coming down the hill, burying a campground underneath, with tragic outcome. I'll put it in the end screen. I said, be careful, watch the mountains around you. What can come down on you? But would you think if you're sitting on top of the mountain? Well, then I'll add that now. Think about where the mountain can come down with you as well. Gosh, so much to think about, right? Can you really feel safe anywhere in the world? That's the big question. If something's classified Kalanchi terrain, this already tells you erosion and slope processes are already active. It is a signature of fragile materials under water-driven incision. So, and in the same description of the IRPI CNR, the landslide that happened on January 16th is characterized as very large. Initial assessment have referenced it a front length on the order of 1.6 kilometers, 1.3 miles, and an affected area around 1 square kilometer. And that's early stage figures, but they tell you the scale. That is huge. That is really huge. And what is most important, guys, really listen to this. The slide direction was described as developing towards the valley system. That means it's towards the Maroglio area. So yeah, this makes sense, right? Gravity wants to move material downhill into drainage lines. That's why this is the direction. And the big question that I always have is when I see something like this, are there older cracks or landslides that could have told the story, could have given a warning? What has happened in the past? And I'm not just talking about the last weeks, months, or years. I would go back decades. So I did a little research. The Sante Croce area has a major historic landslide record from 1997. This is a well-known event that occurred on October 12th, 1997. It's associated with major damage in the Sante Croce area. That's the same broader neighborhood name showing up again in the current reporting. So if we look at the Italian landslide historical database, that was interesting to have a look at that, guys. It's called Progresso AVI. It records an Niscemi event that is dated back to December 10th, 1997. That's what I was looking for. Boof, there it is, right? An older event. So they should have known that they're sitting on something unstable. And explicitly, previous events are flagged in there. So local historical retrospectives also describe the 1997 landslide as a defining disaster for that quarter of town, with long-term impacts on buildings and community infrastructure. So, okay. Have they done anything today, right, to secure that? Can you secure a hill like this? Hardly, right? Hardly. So even if individual details, what I found vary across retellings, the core point is quite stable. This zone has a known history of, and we have to say, serious slope failure. But what do you do? Abandon the whole town? If you're on an island, you don't have so many areas. Well, you don't want to live on the foothills of Etna or on the part of the slope of Etna that is crashing, sliding slowly into the sea and might suddenly fall into the sea at once, triggering a never known disaster for the Mediterranean, right? So something else that I found. Roads around Niscemi have repeatedly been hit by slope failures. Found a lot of records from the 1990s. So the same Progresso AVI archive includes multiple year-by-year listings that reference landslide impacts around Niscemi on key provincial roads. So why did they not move the roads? Maybe it's not possible. What private land ownership, geology, yada, 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 right? It's not that easy. So, but that's exactly the kind of repeating hazard pattern that I was looking for. And you do have a repeating hazard pattern when you see weak slopes that sit above critical transport corridors, we have to say. So when now, fast forward to now, 2026, Reporting says the road SP10 and other connections are disrupted. Yeah, that fits a documented pattern. This road network sits in terrain where slope processes have repeatedly caused problems over decades. So, but what's happening in January? The January 26 events appears to involve more than one event. I also found data this January 16th, large landslide, then later reporting right now, additional emergency actions, landslides, closures. So the overall sequence look like multi-episode instability period that we have right now, not a single moment. And yeah, guys, that's common after extreme storms. Once a slope system is destabilized, right? It doesn't stabilize when the rains stop. It can keep moving in pulses, and especially if more rain were to follow. So I want to talk a little bit about the how. What then physically triggers these landslides, the failure of the hill? So this is the heart of it. So imagine a hillside that is made of weak clay-rich layers under normal conditions. Yeah, it's holding barely, we have to say. Then rain infiltrates the ground, water fills the pores between the grains. That's what we call the pore pressure rises. And then rising pore pressure reduces the effective clamping force that is holding the grains together. So the slope loses shear strength. That's the scientific wording. And if there's an existing old slip surface, common like in previously failed terrain, it can reactivate even faster. So that already failed before detail was so important for me to find it, to know what's going on there right now. So it's not abstract here. We found it, right? The IRPI explicitly notes the January 2026 slide developed in units already affected by past landslides, which is exactly how reactivation happens. So what we're seeing right now is a reactivation. And why does this matter beyond Niscemi? Because this is a Sicily-wide pattern that many people do not know. Many buy holiday homes in Sicily and they think, oh, doesn't this look nice? I have a house on a hill or down the hill in a beautiful valley. The Sicily's hazard problem is not only earthquakes, volcanoes, or storm surges and stuff like this. The island has vast areas where slope instability, we have to say, is a chronic risk, especially where we have these weak sedimentary units, human construction, and then intense rainfall overlap, and that's then a problem. So Harry is just a reminder that Mediterranean cyclones can deliver like short time, short duration, extreme rainfall that is capable of triggering these landslides across a wide region. So Niscemi is not random bad luck. We cannot really say that. It's a case study of what happens when all these events are coming together. So what's next? What have authorities to do and what are they checking and what to expect? So if this situation continues to evolve, which it looks like it does, the next steps usually involve. They have to monitor the cracks, the ground displacements especially, and they have inclinometers, GPS, and drones that they can use to do that. And they have to, that's especially important, they have to check for retrogressive movement. That's basically the headscarp migrating unslope. And guys, I've worked in the geology field for a long time looking at that, and that's what we always looked first, right? Is there an instability? If we want to do some work there, this is crucial because that can haunt you later on fatally if you're not looking at that, right? And of course the question comes up here, they must have known, why are there still so many inhabited structures on the edges? But again, Same thing. Why is everyone still living on the supervolcano in Naples, right? That is the most densely populated volcano. They live right on top of it. It's hard. Where do you go? It's also money-wise, right? These villages there, they're not rich and have multiple homes. So drainage control, that's another thing that they could do to try to catch the water, but the water will still infiltrate these clay layers. So let's not fool ourselves, right? But if they do surface water diversion, temporary pumping were feasible, maybe they can do something. They've been trying this in Brienz, by the way, where the landslide came down, where we're still waiting for the final devastating landslide that will destroy the village. I'll put one video in the end screen that gives you an overview about that. They were building tunnels and they tried to drain the mountain, but hasn't helped. They need to close the roads until stability is reassured and reassessed. That, in my opinion, will take a while. So the operational response now is clearly, it is already in motion. We have evacuations, we have closures, we have regional and national and international attention on this thing. So when you hear landslide in Niscemi, don't think of it as a single slope collapsing, right? It's an reoccurring interaction between storm-driven water, weak clay-rich geology, and old landslide terrain. Then we have that a problem that the town's connectivity depends on roads that are running through exactly the places that fail first. So guys, I hope you found this interesting. I mentioned so many videos. Everything's here in the end screen, or go to my channel start page, click on videos, on recent, or go into the search bar and search for certain events if you want to, or just throw through. If you want to become a member, click the join button. Then you can see all the private videos with behind the scenes stuff of my private life. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the coffee that you keep buying me on my Buy Me a Coffee site. Oh, that's cool. I don't want to promote any company. Let's do it like that. The elk. Thank you so much for that, for lubricating my voice. And yeah, I would like to see you in the next one. I think the videos here are interesting. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Look up, look down, look left, look right, anywhere basically. Bye-bye.